The search of the 3 missing Montgomery College students continues in Frederick County tonight.
10 days and thousands of man-hours have been unable to produce any clues.
We have a few leads, a few other options we want to take advantage of, and just try to put together some pieces to this puzzle.
Do you believe the occult may be involved in the disappearance of your son?
I'm so scared.
Welcome everyone to Cinemarcade. This is the podcast where about movies, video games, and the sparks that fly when those two worlds collide. I'm already forgetting the intro because it feels like it's been a long time comparatively since we've all gotten together to do this. So I'm forgetting stuff already. But that should not diminish my excitement in any way to talk about this movie and to close out our month of spookiness. A month that's been a lot of fun for me because I always love getting real into it. But today we're talking about The Blair Witch Project. And who else is lost in the woods with me right now bickering over a map?
I am J-Ban. Real excited.
There's a palpable energy in the room right now. I think everyone can feel it. Who else is here with us?
Hi, my name is Justin, and I will never kick and or touch any creepy looking effigy-like things in the woods, because that is how you get murdered.
That's true.
I'll make
Or
an
haunted.
effigy. I'll make an effigy.
Yeah.
I know you're not like they heavily discourage that you make cairns, but I'm like, screw it. I'm alive. I'm a human. I can make a cairn.
For
Absolutely.
now,
Yeah.
that's how you end up unalive.
No. Making cairn, like if
leaving them to freak other people out.
yeah, you leave them to share the reality with other people.
Look, I'm not. Same thing where I'm not going to touch a Ouija board in my lifetime.
Really?
I'm not-
even though it says
I'm
like
not
Parker
messing
Brothers
with it.
on it? Like
I
that
don't
doesn't bother
care.
you? Okay.
Look, the ghost of capitalism can live well through anything. I don't want to mess with it.
Ford, you have freed me from your
Henry Ford was a very scary person.
He was
super-
kind of a jerk.
He was very shady.
Yeah, no, I'm genuinely afraid of Henry Ford. Well, we're glad to have you back. We're glad that you recovered from your warlock's curse, Justin, that turned you into Christian for a while. Yeah, but you're fine now. Yes, glad to have you back. And today we are talking about The Blair Witch Project, one of the true cinematic phenomenons of my lifetime. Like absolutely an unprecedented, weird hit movie that I think is still pretty divisive to this day. We haven't talked about it beforehand, but I expect it's going to be a little divisive amongst the three of us.
I think I agree that I think it is going to be very divisive, and I'm trying to interrogate, like through this episode, I'm going to try to interrogate my own opinion about this movie, because there's an opinion I have about this movie, and I'm just like, there's just so much evidence to the contrary, but it's just it's so difficult for me to be like, I've got a negative interpretation of this movie.
And that's fair. Yeah, and you're not alone. A lot of people really turned on this movie. Some of it is just like the unexpected success of it. Some of it is just like the way that it's shot and the way that it's presented is not really for everyone. And I still understand that. I will say that this movie has always had kind of a strange sort of power for me. I mean, I think I was just at the right age when this came out. Like I was never in the bag for it. Like, oh my God, I believe this is real. Like there were a vocal number of people who thought this was actually a real documentary. I was never quite there, but I did always think this was a really scary, well done, effective movie. And I'm willing to bet, Justin, this is your first time with this one.
Yeah, I actually knew production lore about the movie, but I had never seen it.
Well, let's get into some of that production lore because it is a fascinatingly made movie. The Blair Witch Project was released July 14th, 1999. It's directed and written by Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez, and it stars Heather Donahue, Michael Williams, and Joshua Leonard. So Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez, they were film students in the early 90s, and they were talking, and they realized that the movies that they found scariest were not like scripted horror films, but they were like made-for-TV documentaries about ghost sightings, things like that. That was the stuff that always creeped them out most. So they came up with the idea of kind of combining the two, making a movie that looked like one of these made-for-TV documentaries. They wrote out a 35-page script outline, and then they put out a casting call for actors with a lot of improvisational experience because they would need to come up with most of the dialogue on the fly. The 3 actors they cast were selected out of a pool of more than 2,000 hopefuls who came out.
Oh, wow.
They were cast for their chemistry, their improv abilities, and their ability to operate a camera, which is also all very essential for the making of this movie. Yeah, now, I think this might be some of the lore you're talking about. The way this movie was shot is that these 3 actors were just dropped in the Maryland woods for 8 days and kind of left to their own devices. So I think partially that helps with the sense of authenticity that this movie has, where they're really starting to feel agitated and dirty and tired by the end of the movie. For the most part, they were all alone.
It's my understanding that it felt genuine that they were agitated because they were actually getting agitated and pissed off at each other over the duration of this whole project.
Yeah, I would not doubt it at all, because the directors were largely unseen, but they were making their presence felt they would leave film canisters out in front of their tents every morning, which would give them general character notes and like where they wanted their characters to go by the end of this day. Like, they don't care how they get there, they just have to end up at this point. And they would also show up at night and do weird stuff to their tent to freak them out. They did not know when or what was going to be happening. There's a famous scene in this movie where you hear her just screaming like, "Oh my God, what the fuck is that?" And we don't actually pan the camera and see what she's looking at. What she was looking at was a production assistant in like a white morph suit, like just standing in the woods, like off in the distance, just standing there, not chasing them, just like trying to freak them out. Yeah, and we see some of this in the movie, like the hands on the tent and like things like that. And
if I think it was this particular one or one of the later Blair Witch movies, but I believe in this movie you never really see any of the spookies.
No.
But it was my understanding that they originally wanted to do some with that and just couldn't figure out a way to do it, or their plan failed. Either they were going to try to like rig something and they just couldn't get it to work quite right.
I think it was largely budget, because I think all told, before advertising costs and everything like that, this movie cost about $60,000. Which is, for those who know anything about filmmaking, that's pretty incredibly cheap for a movie to get made and like still pay your cast and crew and stuff like that. So that was that was probably an element to why they had to leave it out. I think it's more effective that we didn't see any of the monsters in this.
Yeah, definitely. It was more effective that you didn't see the monsters. I think it's, I do like the arts and crafts angle.
Yeah.
And I am very partial to the arts and crafts horror filled, like True Detective like I feel like it's an heir to Blair Witch in the arts and crafts nature of horror.
It's kind of rustic, like folklore, Americana kind of spin on it. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing how scary this movie can be just by like taping a couple of sticks together. Like there's something to be said about how effective that is.
There's a game called The Forest where a big part of the game is that you crash land on an island and there's like cannibals on the island.
Yeah.
But you like discover all of this on your own, including finding like their effigies and stuff with like, some of them are just, harmless looking wood and stuff like what we see in this movie.
Yeah.
And then you'll find one with a burning skull and you're like, oh,
that one seems
I don't
ominous
think
somehow.
I should be here.
Yeah.
And I feel like that game took a lot of cues from that part of like just having creepy stuff around to give you the kind of like suspense and like atmospheric horror of like something's out here and I don't know where it
Yellow
is.
Jackets also heir to the Blair Witch arts and crafts movement.
Yeah, like antler headdress kind of thing. Yeah. So yeah, this movie, they shot around 20 hours of footage altogether, and then the directors edited it down to that 81 minutes. Very tight movie.
That is surprisingly a small amount of footage, considering they had multiple cameras for
That's
8
true.
days.
Yeah. I imagine a lot of it was probably not very usable, but yeah, they put them out there and had them do that. Yeah, like I said, all told, this cost about $60,000 from start to finish. It debuted at Sundance in early 1999. It was a surprise hit right off the bat, and Artisan Entertainment bought this movie for $1 million. That's not a company that exists anymore, but they were, I think Lionsgate owns them now. And now they had to figure out how to market this very unusual film. And so that's kind of where the legend of the Blair Witch sort of comes out, because this is the first movie to have like a viral internet marketing campaign, which is kind of a big deal. So the website for this movie is pretty iconic. They had like missing posters, they had faux police reports, they had supplementary material, documentaries, other things like that. Kind of, they made the website be all about what happened to these kids without actually saying this is for a movie, you know, and that was kind of a brilliant way to do it. And then they showed a 30-second teaser trailer before Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, which was the biggest movie of that year. It was the scene of, you know, the monologue of her, like, kind of going up her nose, the oft-parodied monologue where she's saying she's so scared and apologizing to her family. They showed a little bit of that before Phantom Menace, and that was just kind of like, everybody is just like, what the hell movie is this? Like, this looks insane. And this was an outright phenomenon, like no other way to put it. After incredible word of mouth and small theatrical run, it expanded wide, made more than $30 million its first week, which is 500 times its budget. Yeah. Pretty insane. It would continue to rack up wins. It would stay in the in the box office for the top 10 for 10 solid weeks, for a total box office run of $250 million, which made it the most profitable movie of all time in terms of just raw profit. It's since been beaten by Paranormal Activity, which cost less and made more.
My question to that is, where did that money end up? Because you said that the movie was bought for $1 million.
Yeah, I couldn't find that out.
Is the $1 million pretty much all that the creators got out of it, and then the studio took the rest?
I'm not sure what their deal was. I hope that everybody kind of made a good amount of money off of this. I'm not entirely sure if the cast got really compensated. I know all three of the cast members had kind of a negative experience with the fallout of this movie, because for those who weren't alive in 1999 or who weren't really cognizant of it, the Blair Witch Project was a phenomenon. Yeah. Every late night talk show had their own spin on it. There were so many different parodies. There's so many different ways that it worked itself into popular culture. Just in 1999 alone, we had the Bogus Witch Project, the Hip Hop Witch Project, the Blair Witch Project, the Tony Blair Witch Project, and then, of course, the Scooby-Doo Project, which we all just sat and watched, and it was kind of delightful. 17 minutes short on Cartoon Network. That's a weirdly dead-on parody of the movie.
When we say it's a 17-minute short, isn't that just about an episode of Scooby-Doo?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's about an episode of a cartoon show. Yeah. And I think one of the most important impacts that this movie had was, like, all of a sudden kind of the floodgates were open, and everybody in the world is just sort of like, oh shit, I could make the next Blair Witch Project. And everybody did. J-Ben, did you and your friends make a Blair Witch parody at any point in your lives? Did any of you have a camcorder?
No, I didn't have a camcorder, but I definitely, the cool band boys had a camcorder.
We always go back to the cool band boys.
I think you have a skewed idea of how cool band kids are.
I was, in my opinion, they were the cool kids. I don't know, like who gives a fuck about football? Like the band kids making, they made a parody of Evil Dead and they showed it in our group. And
amazing!
And I was just like, oh my god, if I had a game, I would hit on y'all. But I did not have game as a teenager.
Yeah, I mean it's. For me, yeah, my friends definitely broke out the camcorder and we filmed our own little cheapy, like, goofball versions of Blair Witch, where we're like, everybody, if it's not exactly this, everybody got the idea to suddenly make their own horror movie.
Yeah.
Because suddenly it's viable. Like, this is a realistic amount of money to raise to make a movie, and this movie was a huge crossover hit, so suddenly it's viable. Anybody could be a filmmaker. And I think that really translates into kind of the internet era of filmmaking. You know,
Yeah.
more and more we're seeing people who are making movies on their phones. Like that's a perfectly viable way to make a movie now.
My friends definitely did not pull out the camcorder because
They were 3.
they were 4. All right, come on.
Excuse me.
Some of them might have even been 5.
With the tough kids, maybe.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was actually, oddly enough, one of the older kids.
Oh.
Because of the way my birthday fell and the way like the cutoff was, because the cutoff was like February or something.
Okay.
My birthday was January, so I was like, all right.
You got the edge. You got the edge.
At no point did I have any other edge, but I had that one.
You still have that though. You still have been
I
born in
do.
January.
And like even to this day, I am older than like my roommate, who we've been friends for a long time, and we were on the same t-ball team.
Oh, there you go.
It's like, yeah, of course he's younger than me.
I mean,
he's the baby of
I
the
think
household.
so. Getting to the movie.
yes.
You don't want to talk about my childhood anymore?
Continue, please. Continue, please, before he
didn't have
talks
to
more about his
pause.
childhood.
You could have just kept talking.
No, is there anything more you want to talk about, Justin?
No,
About your-
honestly.
Okay, cool. But I was about to say, it's like I feel like I had a hard time when this movie first came out. Well, first of all, like I feel really bad for the actors because they all used their real names, and so they were getting like their families were getting condolence like cards.
Yeah.
Because they didn't realize that these people weren't actually missing and weren't actually in trouble, and it also made it very difficult for them to get jobs down the line. And I just like. So I'm an improviser. We're all improvisers. And like I've done improvised movies and like they're really fun, but they're also very difficult. They take a big toll on the actors.
Yeah.
And so I heavily admire the actors in this. However, I do think like the character choices to make the characters so unlikable.
Yes.
It was a real struggle for me because like the Heather Donahue like character was definitely like a person like she's like a woman in charge, but they make her so unlikable, and it was a real challenge for me to be like, this lady is so fucking annoying. She doesn't know what she's doing. She's unprepared to go out into this wilderness, and like they're so woefully unprepared and like lackadaisical that it's really hard to like them.
Well, and I think once so much of the tension like throughout the movie is coming from their bickering. You know, it's the tension is between the actors.
Yeah.
And, I do think it was a choice, and I understand this is also a complaint I've heard a lot of people have about this movie, is they have a hard time getting on board with these characters and with the decisions that they make, And Blair Witch really influenced this resurgence in found footage horror movies in general. And I think that's kind of a recurring complaint, because the same complaint is made about Paranormal Activity and Cloverfield.
Paranormal Activity, the real hell in Paranormal Activity is that woman's relationship.
That
guy was so
sucks.
awful.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
But
yeah.
I still think that in terms of like he sucked, but he at least wasn't like aggressive.
No, he was just kind of like an alpha bro who didn't know what he was talking about, but was charging ahead anyway.
He was a day trader, bro.
Yeah, I always think about that. It's like, oh yeah, I'm a day trader. Yeah, fuck off, dude. But yeah, no, there was definitely a choice. There was definitely a lot of backlash against this movie and against these actors, unfortunately, which like they were not prepared for this movie to be this big. Like imagine like some of us have worked on movies before. Like could you imagine if some of the little movies we made like with our friends
so
for
weird.
fun were suddenly massive blockbusters?
And
like
then
that's a weird idea.
That's a very good point, because if you were like an actor who's acted in things before, I say in things before, but like in notable things before, even if you were just a side character, like I was a background character in Law and Order.
Yeah. Bump bump.
Yeah. At least then, like when something like this comes out, they go, oh, okay, they're an actor. But when you're still kind of in the unknown area doing these like smaller indie projects and IMDb doesn't really exist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they go, oh, that's you. That's
now, of these three, only Joshua Leonard is still acting. He's in a lot of like mumblecore movies like Hump Day, and he was in the recent Soderbergh movie Unsane, where he's like the main killer. Like, so he's still acting. Heather Donahue actually changed her name and is a pot farmer. She's doing very well.
Oh, nice.
She lives in upstate New York. She grows pot, and she changed her name to kind of get away from all this hype.
How long has she been a pot farmer, and how long was it legal to do that in New York?
She was growing medicinally for a long time.
Okay.
And then,
I was like, wait a minute.
Now I imagine it's a different thing. But, she's following her bliss. She's doing well.
What did you say she was following?
She's her bliss.
Follow
your bliss.
In my head, I was like, follow your blaze, man.
Follow your blaze. Also that. Yeah, why
Oh,
not?
also that. But yeah, I think it's hard because like I look at this movie and I don't like it. However, I love so many things about it. Like, I love the fact that it's an improvised movie.
Yeah.
Like, I adore that. I feel like they do a really good job of having a tense lore building situation. I love the beginning interviews. I am a sucker for mythology and lore. So like the interviews at the beginning, setting up this mystery is like, I love those. I could have watched an hour and a half of those interviews.
Oh yeah.
I think it set a good tone for the movie, because sometimes when movies do that, they're a little, you can tell that they're kind of like leading, or they're all saying the same thing. But this was like, it felt like just a bunch of people around a small town telling the folklore and the legends of the town.
It was a mix,
Yeah, there was some intersections, but like the only thing that really was uniform was that the kids disappeared and never showed up.
That's the thing. It was a mix of like actors and actual locals who were just kind of telling these folk stories that they like either partially remembered or were making up in the spot, or like remembering things like that. So like there is a nice authenticity to it. One last note I want to make about this is that this did become a franchise. People forget that there is a second and a third movie. Have either of you seen any of the sequels?
No.
Oh my God! Stay away from Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2. That came out in 2000, so it was like a less than a year turnaround to get that movie out. What a pile of shit. Justin, you might like it. It's almost all like new metal on the soundtrack. So you might actually like at least that soundtrack.
I'm pulling up the soundtrack.
I'm sure there's some band named like Blood Shovel or something like that. I don't know what they call it. But then there was a 2006 reboot called Blair Witch, which goes back to the found footage roots and is better. It's not a very memorable movie, but that's just kind of like, that's the movie where they did have the special effects budget now to show us the witch, and it's just less scary. It's less effective, Like, I think the brilliant thing about this movie is how little they actually show you and how scary they managed to make it. So let's get into it.
I do think that the final shot is scary. I do think that you're sitting through this, him and being in the corner, and then just like the end, the abrupt ending is scary.
It is.
Like it's just like the movie is 80 some minutes and it feels like it's 3 hours. And it's
especially
I'm ready to fight you on this one. I'm like, yeah.
When I watched the movie, I was, as I often am, running a little bit late, so I was like, all right, I'm going to put this bad boy on 1.2 times speed, because man, is this dragging a little bit. We're going a lot of places and nowhere all at the same time.
Well, I mean, that's the point.
We're
They're
constantly
going in a loop.
moving, but then the only thing that's happening is they're just getting annoyed, which means they're getting more annoying to me as well.
Well, I think it's also like there's quintessentially, I grew up in Michigan. I grew up in forests, like a reasonable size. Like if you get lost in a forest, you pick a direction and you go, and you like, there's no reason for you to go in a circle unless you're following trails.
Yeah.
Like the trails are designed to be like in a circle, but like if you're actually trying to get back to your car or something, like I have been lost maybe once or twice. Like when I was in Northern Ireland, I kind of got fucked once because I was like wandering around. But you know what I did? I picked a direction and I fucking went with it. And then you just sort of hope for the best, and you're like, oh, I found this road, and now I can ask for directions.
I think the rule is you're supposed to find a water source, right? You just find like a river and follow that.
So
Because it's always going to go to something bigger.
The hard part about following that's what you're supposed to do. But the thing is that most rivers meander.
Yeah.
So they fall back on themselves. So that's a really inefficient way to find your way back.
That's fair.
But it's better than nothing. It's
better than kicking the map into the river and just walking in circles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look,
as a child of the corn, I will say that J-Band's advice is usually a good idea. If you're ever stuck in a cornfield, just walk down the fucking rows of corn until you get to the end of the corn, and then walk around the end of the corn until you get to where there's a road.
Okay.
Somewhere, somehow, somebody drives to that field.
All right.
And then you find the road, and then you follow the road until you find people.
And that's the rule too. If you're caught in a corn maze, just put your hand on one wall and then just like keep your hand on the wall. No matter where you go, it'll take you out. That's for all the many people getting caught in corn mazes on this.
I hope people are listening to our podcast just be like, you know what? I was afraid of getting lost, and now I'm not.
This is absolutely the most current episode we've ever recorded, I should say. We are recording this the night before this goes up. I'm going to edit this directly after we watch it. We can make current cultural
references.
How about them sports teams that are winning?
Rangers are in the World Series.
Are they?
I learned that this week from a friend of mine.
Good for that Texas team?
Dallas.
Yeah. Yay, I do.
The Texas Rangers.
Yeah, it's also the New York Rangers, the hockey team.
Oh, yeah.
They're doing all right.
That'd be funny if the baseball team had to fight the hockey team. They fight, right?
I think
the hockey team wins that fight.
I mean, they have knives on their feet. But
Yeah.
I digress.
They used to have Ryan Reeves, too, but now they don't. He's a guy who really just fights people, and that's about it.
Oh, okay.
It's a good time.
He's a goon, so they call it.
He's kind of one of the last.
I know it's a sports thing.
But
anyway,
he's not going to be there much longer.
Speaking of goons, yeah, I want to make a defense of the character's actions in this. Like, I think yes, it is always a struggle, and this is a complaint I've heard about this movie forever, and I understand it. I really do. It is hard to get on board with characters who make decisions that do not seem very intelligent. But we also need to check our own sense of privilege, like watching from a seat, like knowing this is a movie and knowing where they go. The characters are not supposed to know they're in a movie. And even more so, this is a story about hubris, right? You're venturing. It's a classic American folklore of you are venturing into a place where you don't have any right to be, but you're kind of like blithely wandering in, either because you're ambitious like Heather is, or you're just young and angry like Mike is, or you're just going along for the ride like Josh is. You know, that's kind of what the point of it is. But I understand, like, especially when it's going for such verisimilitude, but like you need to feel like you are living with these characters. It does feel like they're being
three
dumb.
characters, who do you identify the most with?
Oh God, I'm probably Josh.
I'm
probably the Josh of the group. Yeah, I'm just trying to, get high and like film stuff and then get my teeth ripped out. That's my life goal, really. What do we think? I don't know. I think you might be the Mike.
No,
honestly.
I'm a Heather.
You think you're a Heather?
Well, only like I'm good at my job.
Oh snap! You're better at growing weed than Heather. Okay.
No, it's just like I feel like that's one of the reasons why her character probably like annoys me so much, is because I see a lot of myself in her.
Sure.
Like somebody who like wants to create projects and get stuff done and go out and do stuff that maybe people haven't done before. But like honestly, like you're taking people into the woods and you don't know how to like. Literally, that should have been like a day trip. It should have been like it should have been 4 hours in, 4 hours out, like in and out, done and dusted.
But she's young and she's hubristic and she wants to make this movie, and she's not thinking about.
And I think that's one of the hard parts about the movie is like I do wish that it was a little bit more either heavy-handed that it was magical, or heavy-handed that it was hubris that it was, because like the combination of both I could see. I think the combination of both is why this movie made almost $250 million.
Yeah.
But I personally, from a storytelling perspective, would have preferred if it was a little bit more magical or a little bit more hubris based. I
am curious to hear your take on the 2016 Blair Witch. I'm curious to rewatch it myself, actually, because it's been a little bit, but I think we agree Justin is the Blair Witch, right? Yeah, of that triad. I think you're not a Mike, but you're definitely a Blair Witch type.
I think that's. I need to revise it. I would be the Blair Witch probably.
No, you'd be the old lady in the trailer, like telling this folklore stories.
Yeah,
like,
no,
I
100% would be that person.
Mary Brown.
Like, yo, get the fuck off my lawn! What are these stupid kids doing here?
She's got
Go away!
Hands covered in fur and very scary nails.
Yeah. I think it's so this movie, I can't deny it was a phenomenon.
Yeah.
It made a ton of money. It definitely created a cultural zeitgeist. And I think that's something that I love about horror films is I love the fact that they can be like we did Texas Chainsaw Massacre a few weeks ago. They can be this sort of like amazing moment that just captures the imagination, and it captures the imagination through fear. And I don't know, I'm not that afraid of the forest, and
fair.
Maybe if I've been in maybe if it was set in Siberia, but the thing that they kept saying is this is America. You should just be able to walk in a direction and go.
But again, they just kept saying, "No, man, this is America. This doesn't happen in America." I'm like,
exactly.
This is exactly why it would happen in America.
That's what I'm saying.
Because somebody's running around in the woods yelling, "This is America."
Yeah, it's the hubris again. It's like they assumed that because they are young and because they are American that nothing bad could ever happen to them. And of course, that's the dawning realization of the dawning horror. But again, Jabin, you are representing a definite large portion of the audience of this movie. When this first came out, it was pretty even split. I even remember just talking with friends. I would have been in early or middle school or high school or something like that at this point, and even my friends who saw were right down the middle, and there were some people who got sick from watching the movie because of the shaky movements. There were people that passed out, that walked out of the theater, and there were some people that were genuinely terrified by this movie, and I always found it really scary. I really do think it's a very scary, very effective movie because I'm always going to be more afraid of things I don't see than things I see. And you don't see anything in this movie, but it really does build that mounting dread. I think the section leading up to the big climax at the house is so tense. And a lot of it comes from the characters arguing and bickering and making poor decisions, but it does help build into kind of the mania that they're experiencing. And there is this kind of intimacy of being from their perspective for so much of this, through these cameras. We are in this situation with them, and it is very unnerving, I find. I don't know. I
do agree that it's unnerving. I just it's if you watch this for me and there was a graph of my my responses, it would be aggravated for 80 minutes, scared for 15 seconds of
Oh, come on. That segment is at least 2 minutes long. Yes, very scary.
But I don't know. There are things I like about it. I do like some of the night sequences. I do like the confession where she is apologizing for being such a jerk about getting everyone lost.
I mean, that's a really good performance. Yeah. That really is. That scene is made fun of a lot. Was it Scary Movie where they're making her have all the big snot bubbles? And then, So they, it's been made fun of to death, but it is still an incredibly effective moment. Justin, I haven't even asked you where you came down on this movie. Is this one that you, did you respond to this at all? I mean, you sped through some of it.
I like atmospheric horror a lot. But I was getting, you were getting moments that were good atmosphere and scary stuff, creepy stuff was happening.
Yeah.
And then we'd cut to, all right, the next 15 minutes is going to be them just yelling at each other. The whole map sequence was one, and this question came up while I was watching it as well as now. How do you kick a map? How do you kick a piece of paper?
I mean, I imagine he crumpled it and maybe threw it. Maybe I imagine he was just being descriptive, he just chucked it into the river. But yeah, he did say kicked it into the river. So
look,
hey, maybe it was on the banks and he scooted it with his foot or something.
I was gonna say, because if he got that one shot into the river, even if you crumple it up, I guess you can probably give it a go.
Yeah.
I've never been coordinated enough to do that, and I guess that I
could kick a map. I could kick a map.
I don't.
I think the
I
problem
could
was
kick a
the map would fall down, and then you'd have to kick it again and
See,
again, and then you're
that's
just sort of like ripping it apart with your
J-Bam
feet.
once
When you put it that
bound up-
way-
she just balled up a map and then like held it for me to kick. And when I went to go get it, she moved it, and I said, "Arg!" Fell right over.
We didn't watch Charlie Brown and the Great Pumpkin. Yeah, I feel like I could eventually kick a map, but I'm not getting it without somebody going, "What the fuck are you doing over there?"
Yeah, I do think they would have. I think you'd notice it, and like honestly, because it just so like you're right about hubris, but like I don't think anybody in their right mind would have like gotten rid of the map, like even if it wasn't being very effective. Like you would have been like, hopefully we'll find our way eventually with the use of the map.
But he's also hot-headed. Like that's Mike's character, is that like he's the aggressor for so much of it, which is like why I think it makes it extra poignant when we get to like kind of the final third. So Josh is the first of the three to go missing. They wake up in the middle of the night, he's just gone. And from then on, like Mike and Heather are just kind of like, they stop fighting, they stop bickering, they're very supportive of each other, and they're just, I think they just realize that they're the last two people that they're going to see, and they better be nice to each other. It makes it very poignant, I think.
And
Like,
I do think it
all
makes
go.
it poignant. I just think it's like, again, it's just real difficult to like these people who are making really like I love horror when people make generally smart decisions, or at least understandable decisions. Like in Midsummer, one of the transgressions that like was treated like he was a fucking moron was like he was taking a leak on a sacred tree.
Yeah.
But he had no idea that it was a sacred tree. There was no way for him to know that.
No.
So it was just definitely more believable. Like in the sort of initial, they kicked the cairn over of rocks, and it's like that I could be on board with, but later on they just keep making decisions that are just really bad decisions.
And like the thing to me is when it comes to them going in circles,
Yeah.
I think at that point I think the moment that Josh kicked that Karen, that was the moment where they were being punished now.
Yeah.
And so I think that I think that it was magic or mysticism that was making them go into a circle, because they were even saying like, no, we went west. Like all three of them were in agreement that like, no, we didn't go. Like we went in a circle, but we didn't go in a circle.
Yeah.
We were going the same general direction the whole time.
Yeah.
They were flabbergasted. Like there's no way we're back here. And I think that was the moment where they were like, they were in the witch's world now.
Absolutely. I mean, I want to shout out the filmmaking a little bit, because that is one of the big complaints against this movie is like there's so much shaky cam. It looks so amateurish. They're bumping the camera into marshmallows, things like that. But
Into marshmallows?
yeah, you remember in there early on, they're grocery shopping and
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
she's like resting in the marshmallows.
I thought
Yeah.
that was funny.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
But
the shit I'd do.
I want to give them a lot of credit, because I think the master stroke of this movie is having the two different cameras. So they have the color
Yes.
camera that has native sound, and then they have a black and white camera that's only picking up the sound from the other camera. So when we get to the final showdown in the house, we are seeing things from Heather's perspective, because she's holding the black and white camera, but we're hearing her screams from a distance. Like it sounds like so isolated. So the sounds that we're hearing are whatever's happening to Mike. Like, and we don't hear anything. And that's something so much creepier about that like he just gets grabbed, he drops the camera, and then he is just standing in the corner. We're not hearing whispering voices telling him to go in the corner. We're not telling any of that. And then just hearing her screams like through the quieter mic. I think that's really effective. And I think that's a smart
That is
decision.
effective, and I think it like with the story earlier on about the children being kidnapped and put in the corner, which is what they shot that after they wrapped filming.
Yeah.
Because they were like thinking about ending it a couple of different ways, and instead they just decided to end it the way they wanted to end it, but they inserted that interview earlier on so that there's a reason why he's in the corner.
I mean, interestingly, this was originally a sequel to Dirty Dancing, because somebody is putting babies in the corner.
That's me in the corner.
Yeah, Michael Stipe's doing it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think all of the stuff in the house, I think, is solid gold, and I think so much of people's memories of this movie are coming from that final showdown in the house.
I have a bit of a problem with that house sequence.
Okay.
And I think it makes sense why they did what they did, but my memory is a little bit hazy. But at one point, what was her name?
Heather.
Was it Heather?
Yeah.
Oh, they just full on.
Straight up.
Got you. I see what
it's
you're
their
saying
names.
now. Yeah.
Exact names.
Heather found a wrapped up thing.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, that was parts of Josh.
Yes, it was his teeth. And
it was
some
his
flesh.
teeth
Yeah.
and flesh. And she just chose not to tell Mike about it.
Yeah.
But honestly,
yeah.
so let's say that's all supernatural. You didn't come into the woods with some sort of salt. You didn't come in with some sort of a cross, a Bible,
they're
some holy
skeptics.
water.
That's the whole point. The movie that they're making, you can hear their commentary while they're making the movies that they think these people are hicks. They're only caring about finishing this film project. They don't really. This isn't even intended to be a wide release movie. This is a student film for a grade. They are in college still, so they are being dismissive and condescending about everything that they're seeing in this town.
But the thing to me is that Josh disappears.
Yeah.
And I believe that at some point that day they hear Josh in the woods or in the night.
It's at night. They hear him screaming. Yeah.
And it's they can't find him.
No.
And they're clearly just being led around the woods.
Mm-hmm.
And they come back, and I think Mike even says that couldn't have been him.
No.
He would have said something different. He would have responded to what we were saying. And then that morning, she finds the remains of Josh, some remains of Josh.
Yeah.
Doesn't tell Mike about it.
No.
And then then they charge into the house, into the basement, the place where they were told all the murders happen.
Well, you also have to keep in mind they are starving and
terrified,
manic and terrified at this point. They're not.
But it's
the irrational decisions they make at the end of the movie, I think, are pretty understandable. It's the ones earlier on that people struggle with.
if she had told him about that or showed him, then maybe
I don't know.
Maybe they would have approached that with slightly more caution.
I think it was a sacrifice on her part. I think she didn't want him to know what happened to Josh or that he was.
I also think there's elements in this thing that could. One of the reasons why it had such legs is that you could argue that maybe Josh was the Blair Witch, that he was fucking with them. You could argue a lot of different things about this this surmise, whether or not it's the Blair Witch, whether or not it's the creepy old dude who killed the children, whether or not it's the people who killed the was it the soldiers?
Yeah.
And so I feel like having these layers of mysteries helped build the mythos of the Blair Witch,
which is great because all we have to go on with the Blair Witch is just what local folk stories have to say, and they're all contradictory. So as far as we know, the Blair Witch is capable of anything. And so we don't know, and we're not going to get those answers, and I think that's kind of the amazing part.
I think I just put a few things together and came up with a theory that is partially informed by us playing the game, and learning about how that ends. But so in each instance, it's obviously somebody goes crazy and murders people out in the woods, and then Josh goes missing. Yeah. And then somebody murdered them in the woods. Could that have been Josh turned crazy murderer?
It could have been. I don't think there's any evidence to support it. But I think that, that's a speculation. But that everything's kind of valid because we know so little about what this.
Having not
is
watched any of the other Blair Witch movies, not knowing
they're
anything
not
going
to help you.
But
do they not flesh out the mythology of the Blair Witch?
So the second movie, the plot of the second movie is that the first movie is just a movie. And people have started swarming on Burkittsville, Maryland as tourists, as fans of the Blair Witch Project, because they want to find the Blair Witch. And then it turns out, oh, there is a real Blair Witch in this town that's not related to the fake movie.
So they retcon the whole first movie?
They retcon the whole first movie. It's
now, I know
nonsense.
an improv teacher who hates the move of somebody going, cut, this is all a movie. This isn't a real.
Look, the one time I've liked
called
it
The
is-
Rise of the Last Jedi.
There you go. The
Don't
one
say
time
a lot
I've
of
liked it
things.
is when
Skywalker.
Wes Craven's New Nightmare it posited that all the Freddy movies were fake to contain a demon. I liked that. But yeah, Blair Witch 2 does it very poorly.
But so in the game, though, it kind of establishes.
transitioning
and
to
we
the
could
game?
transition
Are
into
we
I think this is a good
officially
time to transition to the game. Yeah.
the game seems to throw out the idea that the Blair Witch is haunting people and turning them into killers to a degree.
Kind of, sorta, and let's talk about this game. So this game is just called Blair Witch. It was released August 30th, 2019, and it was developed by Bloober Team, published by Lionsgate Games, and it's available pretty much wherever you want to play it, including on Oculus, which might have been an interesting way to try this out. That might
No,
have been
I don't
too
think
intense.
we needed that.
No, yeah, you're
We would have thrown up all over the place.
probably a little bit. All right, so first of all, this is not the first Blair Witch game. There were a trilogy of Blair Witch games that came out in 2000 around the height of kind of Blair Witch fever. They're survival horror games. They were released across 3 chapters, only a few weeks apart. And they helped build out the mythology of the series in a lot of ways, but they weren't very well received, and they're kind of hard to find now. I wasn't really able to find any like freeware versions of these, so they basically don't really exist unless you have an old PC and the CD-ROMs still.
Oh, wow.
You didn't want to go to eBay and see how much those were going for?
You know, I think I'm good. I don't have an old Gateway or whatever. I don't know what's an old computer.
No,
but
Gateway's right.
The game we're talking about today, came out in 2019. It was developed by a Polish developer, better known for an indie horror game called Layers of Fear. And so this game is a sequel to the original film. It's set in 1996, so 2 years after the events of the first movie. And you play as a former police officer who goes out into the woods outside of Burkittsville to search for a missing boy. So this is a first-person survival horror game. And the big mechanic here is that you've got a dog that named Bullet, who is going to he'll help you search for clues. He'll help you fight enemies and dig up
That you
stuff.
can customize, which Steve made customized to look like his dog Rivet.
Yes, I sure did. Yes, and even then, it barely looked like Rivet, though.
Yeah, because I thought it was more of like a German Shepherd kind of.
It's definitely like a German Shepherd, and like the colors that you choose in that customizing section don't seem to really translate into the game itself, unless I press the wrong button.
Because the game's also just really dark.
It's very dark. Yeah.
But
It's a horror
also the dog is your PTSD assistant.
Yes, yeah, that's we kind of get to learn a little. I mean, this is much more plot focused than any of the other Blair Witch properties. So we're following this guy. His name's Ellis, and we're starting to learn a little bit about him. We learn that there is this big search party, but the other police didn't want him to be a part of it because he was a former police officer, disgraced for some reason that we don't learn until later in the game.
And we don't even learn that he is a police officer. We just can
We can
pick up
infer,
on
yeah.
the way that he's talking to them. He refers to the sheriff as sir.
Yeah.
And the sheriff seems to genuinely be like, "Hey, you gonna be okay?"
He's begrudgingly letting him help.
Yeah.
But the other cops aren't really having anything to do with him.
And to be fair, he's begrudgingly letting him help because he doesn't think it's good for Ethan. Ellis.
Ellis, yeah.
Ellis.
Doesn't think it's good for him.
Not
yeah.
the guy from Left 4 Dead, but
No. But yeah, so we're learning a little bit about his character as it goes on, as we're looking for this boy. And this happens through flashbacks that are sometimes triggered. And we're also finding video cameras. And I think this is a really clever element to this game that does a good job of tying it into kind of the found footage roots of the original. You find these you find a camcorder, and you'll find little tapes scattered around the forest. And the tapes are actually a mechanic here. If you watch the tapes and pause it at the right place, you can manipulate your reality. So I think the way you did it was you're watching a videotape of a little boy playing with a toy police car, and when you froze it on the police car, the toy police car appeared in real life.
Well,
that you got to pick up.
It was actually whenever the camcorder was on the part with the police car,
Right.
the police car was there.
Yes.
And so it's nighttime in the dark. You're, just at a campsite, and you kind of like go through it, and then if you're looking in the right general direction, which means you might have to, pull away the camcorder, move around a little bit, you then like the car came in, and I noticed on the side of the screen, which is the outside world, not the camera, that the police lights were flashing from the police car that the kid was playing with, and I was like, okay, all right. And then it doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't go, oh yeah, you got it. You just go, I think this is it, and then you put the camera away and you walk over and you go,
but it's
okay.
It's a clever way to incorporate like the original film into kind of this new story. Most of what we were doing though was just kind of walking around in the woods,
getting lost.
Which again, part of the experience of the Blair Witch.
I want to point out that I was following the damn dog. And I love dogs, but this dog was just running me in very large circles. And there's like a little bit of a mechanic of like if the dog is like going after, so like you pay attention to the dog. If the dog's barking, it's either barking because it wants you to come find them, or because it got too far away and it's got separated from you. And then the little guy also will growl at things that are bad.
And your character also starts to have a panic attack the longer he's separated from the dog.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because we learn he's like kind of a support animal.
And then, so then we got most of the way that we got just by following the dog.
Yeah.
And then the dog takes me around into 4 big circles, big old loops.
Yeah.
And then that's when we were like, maybe we just watch a video on the rest of this. Because at this point, we're already 30, 40 minutes in.
And to be clear, like, this is not a very long game. We took a look at the walkthrough after we played it. It's like a 3-hour game. So this is a very doable. But I think we were adding on to our time just by wandering around the woods because they're very dense. They look very similar. There's no real landmarks, and there's no real way that I could tell to indicate like where you were supposed to be going.
Yeah. And like the best thing that you have is like whatever color you chose for the dog's collar, and then like following that color, because the dog runs.
Yeah.
And you have to sprint to keep up, but then the dog is still outpacing you a little bit. So then you have to call the dog back, and then the dog eventually comes back and then like stands there for a little bit and then takes off running again, and you just like continue doing that dance.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of like fun and interesting atmospheric stuff. I think the game, there's a major motion blur effect when you first start the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I turned that off after a little while.
And that helped. I think.
That helped. However, there's still like, and it could be that we were playing it on a TV and not necessarily a monitor. So it could be partly like the DPI scaling and stuff, but also maybe something else to do with the response time of the TV. But everything felt kind of muddy and blurry regardless. Like it just wasn't sharp or in focus, which made it even more harder to follow a dog in the dark.
I found the game enjoyable for the time that we played it, and I definitely could see like getting frustrated with it, but so far I by the time we finished playing with it, I think we was like the initial frustration, which I think we could have plotted our way through.
Yeah, if we wanted to take the 3 or so hours, but usually we put like 45 minutes to an hour into each one.
Yeah.
And we were hitting that point, and we knew that there was going to be a lot more.
Right. And I mean, yeah, it's not a game to just easily
I say a lot more, but more.
Yeah. We got enough of a flavor of it for sure, and we got to experience nighttime and the very strange kind of combat system here, which is just I wasn't really clear what was happening. J-Ban, could you tell what was happening here?
So
did we see the monsters?
What I understood is that the dog was pointing to the monster. The monster would come, and you'd shine your light at the monster, and then you'd kill the monster.
Okay. Yeah, you can't see that I'm nodding, but yeah. And then you can see like the best way I can think to describe it is like a reddish outline of the monster.
So it was really
in the distance whenever you hit it with the light.
Okay.
As it runs away.
It was really interesting when this first sort of rolled up. I was like, oh no, I hope this isn't like Vertigo.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting when you get these like horror, psychological thriller based games, and sometimes you're just like, that's not how psychology works, man. I did like the fact that they use a service animal.
Yeah.
Like, I really liked the fact that he was
Yeah.
having anxiety attacks and his service animal was helping him with that. That I did enjoy.
But this was, you're right. This was much more hallucinatory.
Yeah.
than-
And you find out later that he's accidentally murdered 2 people. And you're like, yeah, well, I'd be anxious too.
Yeah.
I'd have PTSD for sure. I already have a little bit of it.
Yeah.
I would have a lot of it.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, it's where the movie is like just all very cinema verite, like you are here kind of thing. This is pretty trippy. It's got like you'll wander through the woods and then suddenly you'll be in like a World War I trench, or what looks like a World War I trench. Turns out to be Gulf War, I think. But
Yeah.
It looks like it's a much older like building at first.
There wasn't really that many trenches,
Probably not. Yeah,
especially not in the forest.
Yeah, I don't think so. But
Not a lot of
hey,
forests in Iraq.
he was like
Baghdad,
combining things in his
Afghanistan.
head. But there were multiple endings
Yeah.
to the game that we found out. Like your dog could live or die depending mostly on how well you treat it, which I don't understand why you would mistreat your dog. This gives you a reprimand button for like scolding your dog. I don't understand what monster would be using that.
Look,
He's
it's
a
not
good
like
boy, damn it.
the worst thing that the dog did to us was barked as if they wanted us to like come to something, and then just led us to water so he could drink. And I was like, you know
See?
what? That's
I would
fair.
let him drink. I wouldn't care. My dogs would be useless in a survival situation, but I would still love them as I was being eaten by a bear.
And even
My
then,
last
it's
thought would
like-
be good dogs.
It's not like the dog is like, taking you over here because, he sees a cute dog.
Yeah.
It's just like, no, I just need to drink something. And
Yeah.
you're like,
Hey,
eh.
I get it.
Look,
But-
if I didn't feel comfortable leaving one of my friends and I needed to go get my water bottle, I would probably be like, hey, can you come walk me to my water?
Spoiler, the end you find out that you're in this weird time loop where you are the kidnapper and you're not the kidnapper. And if you kill the kidnapper, then you become the kidnapper. And so there's like this very narrow window where you can escape. But
No. I believe the alternate ending is that you don't escape, but you end the cycle.
so you just die.
I believe so.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, it's one move. I think I liked his crazy mountain man covered in branches look, so I might just do that. Here's the question though: did either of you find this game very scary? I know we had a lot of we had lights on, we had some bustle because we were making lasagna.
Justin
but,
found it scary.
We did turn some of the lights off, so it was definitely a lot darker. And I think it's a game that borders on the edge.
Yeah.
Of it could be scary, but you're trying to figure out what the hell you're looking at half the time because it's the middle of the night, you have a crappy flashlight, and everything's blurry.
Yeah.
And so, again, this could just be the particular setup that we were doing this on, but in our experience, it was just enough to, what's the term for reasonable disbelief or something? Suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
You don't get that where you're you constantly get that little bit of immersion of oh, I'm playing a game.
Yeah, for example, in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Justin was yelping and screaming
Yeah.
and running around with the chicken with his head cut off because he was afraid he's going to get his head cut off.
A chicken. With his head cut off.
I'm a really vocal person when I play games because I've played a lot of Dead by Daylight and even in games like Warzone or Apex, sometimes my friends are you sounded like R2-D2 running for your life there. And I was look, there was 3 of them and 1 of me.
I mean,
I was not having a good time.
I think this game illustrates kind of an interesting difference between what's scary in a film and what's scary in a game, because I found like the reveal of like the threat in this game just being like an invisible monster that like flashes. Like sometimes your flashlight will just get like really bright, but like that's kind of all you see of it until like later in the game, and like I found that to be a little underwhelming. Like I never really.
The thing that I found spooky was I do like found footage that like the little snippets that they had, like, oh my gosh, they found out the boy was being kidnapped.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the what was going on in this situation. And I have to give props to my favorite found footage show, Archive 81. Which it's a Netflix series that came off of being a podcast, and it's so like the first season is so good. It's spectacular. I heartily recommend it because like, and again, there's something a little spooky and nostalgic about these video cameras that that people used to have, and that you just have these videos of people just being people. And so for the video game, like I found the spookiest part of it was when you were watching the video.
Especially because the videos in this game are, the first video you can't really tell. The second video you're like, oh, I'm watching a boy get kidnapped.
Yeah, that's a little unnerving.
Yeah.
So I'm with you on that. I found that to be more disturbing. I found like just the long moments of quiet in the dark is a little more disturbing. But once the threat actually rears its head and it doesn't really feel like that much of a threat, that kind of took a little of the wind out of it for me. But again, this is meant to be a pretty short game. I think that was a complaint a lot of people had about this when it came out, because it was like a $40 game for like a 3.5 hour like playtime, which, you know, again, even with multiple endings, that's
play
not
the
a whole
forest
lot.
instead.
But yes, exactly. Yeah, Ailish is upset with the forest too. Yeah,
It's great. It's a fun time.
You know, but overall, this is not a terrible game. It's got some cool ideas. It's really got, like, the execution isn't 100% perfect, but I would see this through to the end. Yeah. I'm curious to like give it my own playthrough.
Fun fact: it is now $6.
Oh, good. Oh, great. Okay, perfect. See, even better. No excuse not to.
Although it is on sale, its normal price is $29.99.
Oh, okay. Is that on
Because
Steam?
it's Halloween,
It's
spooky season.
There's a deluxe edition.
Oh, there you go.
Oh,
More dogs.
You get a soundtrack in the art. Okay.
Oh, okay. That's fine. Well, do we have anything final to say about Blair Witch before we close out our month of spookies?
I'll say it in my final.
Okay. Well, let's move on to our rankings then. Is this a good movie, good game, a bad movie, bad game, or somewhere in between? I will start us off. I'm going good movie, good game. I think this movie is a classic. Like, I understand that your mileage may vary on this one, but it really, really works for me, and it just kind of always has. I always think found footage gets kind of a bad rap, just because there are plenty of bad ones, but I think when it's executed well, it's really impactful, and I think this is a good example of it executed well. And I think there's a reason that this one popped off while everybody's little homemade student film did not. I think there's a different level of skill going on to it, and the game is totally solid. Like, this could have been this could have been a real disappointment, given that it's based on a license that had not really been relevant in almost 20 years, and it was like a pretty loose adaptation. And but I think it's solid. It's got some interesting ideas, some interesting gameplay mechanics, and Bullet's a real good boy. J-Ben, how about you?
Okay, I'm going to say, this is going to have a couple of provisos.
Okay.
I say, for me, personally, I think it's a bad movie.
Okay.
However, objectively, as a film historian, as a person who loves film and loves horror, it's a seminal work of art that, you cannot argue its prolific nature, and it's some great performances. It was so innovative. That we still we love the fake documentaries to this day.
Yeah.
So I'm so into say, well, I don't like it. You
get it.
I get it.
You
I
get
get
why
it.
it was big. Yeah.
And I think the game is good.
Yeah.
I think the game is a fun little entry into don't pay $40 for it, but if you get it for $6, you'll have a really enjoyable 3 hours playing it.
Yeah. And Justin, how about you?
I think I am more middle of the road on these. I I think it was an okay movie. Again, like I found it harder to care and to like the characters other than like, oh, these are people in the woods.
Okay.
I wouldn't hang out with any of these people. I mean, I'm sure Josh, honestly, if you didn't put him in the woods, would probably be all right.
He seems like a chill.
He seems like a chill dude.
Yeah.
But they enter asshole territory real quick, and I just was like, like, as far as movies go, if either one of you were the first to die, I don't think it would affect me that much, other than being, the first to die in a horror movie.
Are you talking about us, or are you talking about the characters?
No, the movie.
Okay.
He's looking
The
us dead in
movie.
the eyes and saying, I don't care if either of you die
I think
first.
I think I'm looking at Folgers right now on the counter because my glasses are off.
How
and I can't
dare
tell.
you be
But it's a
smirched,
red
Folgers.
container. Folgers, if you died, I could care less.
That's J-Ban. She's across the room right now, okay? She's very small, all right? Very mean.
She is wearing red.
Yes.
But and I thought the game was okay. I think
I love that all three of us are like complicated answers about the movie, and then game was okay. Yeah.
I think I had small issues with it, but it seems like a small, lower budget game. I think my biggest issue with it is the price tag for sure. I feel like The Forest is almost always cheaper than this, so
Probably.
well, at least if it's full price very often.
Yeah.
I thought it was an enjoyable experience, and I think what was happening was that I was encountering not quite a bug, but like a little issue where a thing was supposed to trigger, but I don't think I was going close enough to that thing to trigger. And so it was then because the dog wasn't quite leading me to the thing.
Yeah.
And so I was like seeing we'd already approached what the item that was in question once. And I think the second time I approached it, after going on a little more of an adventure, something different was supposed to happen. But I just kept walking. I kept seeing it and going, yeah, this is the thing.
Yeah.
And then walking along the general direction the dog went and kind of ignoring it. And then not knowing where the dog was and calling the dog. And the dog took back off on the path we just took.
Okay.
And so that might have been
Endless
operator error.
round and round. And
Again, it's a
round
time loop.
and round.
It's all a
I
time
thought
loop.
that the first time I'm like, okay, we're definitely doubling back.
Yeah.
Maybe something different's going to happen. And then nothing different happened. And I'm like, maybe I missed something. And so then, like, I think the answer to all of that was yes, I missed something and something was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
But eventually I was like, all right.
Just
We
gonna
can-
move on.
Let's
Yeah.
move on.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of our spooky month. Thank you, everybody,
The
for
Forest
listening.
is currently
for
$5.
see, and that's very current because this is happening. This is
And
coming out almost immediately.
Its max price is $20.
Okay.
Its regular price.
So yes, thank you everybody for watching a bunch of scary movies with us. Next week is going to be J-Band's choice, which inadvertently triggered a miniseries.
Yep.
So I'm excited. Tell us what we're
Is
going to
that
be
like
watching.
the
We are
Daily
going.
Double?
Yes, kind of.
Kinda. We are going to be watching Alien.
Daily Triple?
Alien, which means we are doing the entire Alien quadrilogy throughout the month of November. So that's
We're not doing Alien vs. Predator?
We are not. No.
Is
because
that when
there
we do
is-
Predator and we're gonna do a miniseries for Predator and then we're gonna unlock the Alien vs. Predator miniseries?
This is all complicated because any Alien versus Predator game out there is based on the comic book, not on the movie. So it technically doesn't match our standards. But the four movies we're going to talk about: Alien, Aliens, Alien 3, and Alien Resurrection. The original four games. There are four movies in that series, which I'm going to go out on a limb right now and tell people this is my favorite film franchise of all time.
Ooh, I did not know
I am an Alien fanatic. I think all four of these movies are incredible in their own ways. Like some are a little more open to discussion, but I'm excited to get into all of these. Also, probably the most selection of games we have to go through, just because there are so many games based on just Aliens alone. Like we're gonna have so many games to pick and choose from to sort of talk about. So I'm deeply excited.
Some
to
of
get
them
into
were
it.
much better than others.
Some of them are much better than others. Next week,
In
we'll
fact, few of them were much better.
It's true.
than
But next week we'll be
others.
talking about the
My
1979 Ridley Scott original and the Atari game that came out with it. Arguably the first video game movie tie-in. So
Now-
maybe the origins of our show right here.
Are we Are we watching the director's cut or the theatrical release?
Follow
Theatrical
your heart.
release.
Follow your heart.
Okay.
Yeah, they're both good. Honestly, the director's cut just makes like one character's death a little longer. But when we get to Alien 3, I'll make you all watch the director's cut because holy shit, it's unbelievable.
Okay.
All right, well, we will see you all next week for Alien. See you soon, everybody.
Adios.
I am so scared. Okay, that's my one reference. That's my one reference I'm doing.
Fun fact.
Why are you laughing?
The soundtrack for number 2?
Oh my
Got
god.
some solid. You got P.O.D.
Oh my god.
Tommy Iommi and Dave Grohl.
No.
Rob Zombie, System of a Down.
Yeah, this is right in your
Marilyn
Q zone.
Manson.
Right in your Q zone.
Nickelback.
God.
Why?
Oh, wait, now you're judging of Nickelback of all those
at
options?
the Drive-In, Queens of the Stone Age.
I love Queens of the Stone Age.
Yeah,
Solid
right.
soundtrack. So.
It's an interesting soundtrack.
Okay.
All
Well,
right.
listen to the soundtrack. Don't watch the movie.
Bye everyone.
Bye.